Okay, so right away we'll be starting off in King's Pass. We are playing on an older patch. This is 1221, the Grim Troop patch. And so you can see there's quite a few minor glitches. The first of which is inventory dropping, which uncaps fall speed and cancels fall animation. Lets them skip that 10-second stagger at the beginning of the game. So one thing to keep in mind about the run is that despite what it may look like, the two runners, or ins0mnia is not several seconds ahead of Kaleva. We use a loadless timer for the run, and so the official tournament time will be taken from live split at the end, and depending on hardware differences, it's very common to have someone be 2 minutes ahead going into the final boss real time, but actually be behind when you take out loads. That being said, we'll have a pretty good idea of where the two runners are based on their execution. This is a very fast-paced run. And a very, very challenging one, too. This first part with Crossroads, Forgotten Crossroads, is... there's not much to say about it. That's a bit of a lie, because obviously there's, mountains of movement tech for every room, but it's very safe from death, and without many abilities, the movement is somewhat simple. And you can see that on ins0mnia's end too, like, even though a bad fall brought him down to 1 HP early, it really wasn't scary going through the bottom half of Crossroads. And similarly, this first boss fight against False Knight is very safe. We'll just hit him 13 times, knock him over, and then 8 more times to finish the fight. So a lot of people don't know about that shortcut that both racers just used. That is developer intended. After False Knight's first tantrum, the wall becomes breakable, and it saves about 40 seconds to skip the fight and pass up on the 200 geo chest. So ins0mnia had about 348 VS or so. I missed the exact time. So probably, I'm going to guess that Kaleva is about 10 seconds or so ahead, maybe more, in loadless time. Actually, I'll pull up their timer real quick. So Vengeful Spirit, actually an incredibly useful ability. It almost doubles damage output, and it also is used for a lot of movement tech before we get the dash ability. So going into Green Path, there are 3 fireball skips, which is where we're going to use Vengeful Spirit to reset fall speed midair. They're kind of annoyingly precise. All of them have backups, but altogether they save probably close to about 30 seconds or so getting them first try. Yep, so right here, this is another one of the glitches that only exists on the older patch. Neither race are getting the first fireball skip. Yep, on this patch, if you shoot the boulder from off screen, then because of a collision issue, it hits 4 times and kills it instantly. So both racers doing that perfectly. Alright, so the second fireball skip is coming up right after this bench room. It is not optional. So if they miss this, they're gonna have to do a mosquito bogo, which is really slow and annoying. But Kaleva does it easily, as does ins0mnia, so no mosquitoes today, thank goodness. And finally, the last one, easy for Kaleva. Oh, and we have a very minor route divergence. ins0mnia picking up those geo nodes for 50 geo. Kaleva skipped them and instead is going to be killing, Vengeflaking on just the next room here. And that'll give an extra 65 geo, as well as being a few seconds faster than the geo rocks ins0mnia got. Yeah, this is a very, very small reroute, which people only began to implement about 6 months ago. But it does allow you to save about 8 seconds total or so if you can skip a second set of geo rocks later on in Fungal Wastes. Okay, so that just about ends Green Path. We just have the Hornet fight left. The big thing about this boss fight is managing stagger counts. Hornet staggers every 5 hits after the first stagger, and depending on the strategy you want to use, you can either stun lock her in the corner, or you can go for double hits with Fireball. You can see Kaleva trying to set up a double hit. Hornet has very unpredictable movement, and it's very frustrating to actually put it together. But anyways, I did peek at Kaleva's stream. That was a 757 Gothwing Cloak. So it looks like probably about a 35-second separation right now. Absolutely nothing that couldn't change once we get to the difficult parts of the run with Watcher Knights and Umu. But for now, Fungal Wastes, you have to get Mantis Claw to do almost anything in this game past the first 10 minutes. So both of the racers will be doing that immediately. This is a pretty safe area. The enemies are relatively harmless. The movement with Mothwing Cloak is pretty straightforward until the end. At the end, we're going to see two kind of difficult skips really close to each other, and I'll explain those once we get there. Okay, so in the next room for Kaleva, we're going to see something called Explosion Pogo. There are these enemies called sporgs, which shoot out grenades, which explode and do 2 damage. And so we can pogo on the grenade and its explosion. Just like that, and this skip saves close to 30 seconds. It's very precise in the positioning and loses 8 seconds per try. And so right after Kaleva's in Mantis Village, so you have to drop down to hit a lever to open a gate here, then pogo the mantises to get back up. And well, their movement is RNG and position dependent, so you can imagine there's about 10 different Mantis Pogo setups. Okay, it looks like ins0mnia also managed to get up without too much issue. So that's really good to see. Mantis Pogo can be a really big choke point for a lot of people, since if you kill all the enemies by, missing your Pogos, you have to go around for about 30 seconds to pick up the Mantis Claw the intended way. Okay, so if you're familiar with the layout, this might seem a little strange, quitting out after Mantis Claw. Normally in vanilla, you're either going to go into City of Tears or Deep Nest, get Dive, get Tram Pass, something like that. But this is actually going to lead into probably one of the biggest route-changing skips of any percent, and really most Hollow Knight speedruns. We've already seen a bunch of Pogos use the sequence break, but what we can do in this room that Kaleva's in is after the Grozmother fight, which is kind of trivial, we're gonna go back to the bench in the back of the room and then take an intended death, dying in Hollow Knight leaves behind an enemy called the Shade, which we can pogo on, just like everything else, and get just a tiny bit of height to skip about 4 minutes of long and kind of pointless movement it would take to get to resting grounds. Kaleva running a perfect Geo route, buying Shaman Stone with exactly 220 Geo. Remembering to bench, thank goodness. Shaman Stone is an extremely powerful charm. It increases spell damage by 33%, and it expands the spell's hitbox. And both effects of the charm are really, really useful for this run. Okay, so here's Shade Skip. This is a very consistent trick once you've practiced it. The only RNG to it whatsoever is a 20% chance that the Shade can take 3 seconds to shoot a fireball. So that didn't happen to Kaleva. We'll see if ins0mnia gets it. So yeah, I didn't mention it. Both racers talked to Sly after taking the bench. That is purely to set up being able to purchase the lantern in about 7 minutes or so. Lantern not required, or not required for dark rooms in Deep Nest. Both racers could probably do this easily on their own. But Lantern is required to enter Crystal Peak. And later I'll point it out, but getting Crystal Heart is required to finish the game because of one particular stretch of acid in Teacher's Archives. Okay, so Kaleva entering the dream sequence. Dream Nail, kind of a glorified key. We use it to farm soul off of enemies and also to kill the 3 dreamers. And the 3 dreamers basically block the door to the final boss. But yeah, X to you pointing out in chat, there's about 47 seconds of separation, just under a minute. So actually really close for 2 runners who are 8 minutes apart in PB. Yeah, really strong overperformance by ins0mnia. Okay, good. I was a little worried for a second there. Kaleva doing the skip to escape the wake-up cutscene with Seer. You just pause and unpause and mash dash. But that's a slightly dangerous skip because if you enter a room transition while the wake-up animation is completing, then 4 minute... Oh god. That could be really bad. We'll see if Kaleva just lost wall jump. Anyway, so what I was going to say is if you enter a room transition while turning around, then 5 minutes later, when the racers kill Lurian, they'll get a white screen glitch, which softlocks the game. The reason why I was panicking with Kaleva there is if you enter the elevator transition while wall-clinged, you get something, I don't remember what the kind of storage is, but basically the effect is that you can't wall jump anymore, and you have to save and quit. Alright, so Kaleva was lucky there. The transition occurred on a frame where they weren't on the wall. Normally you don't find out until in the stag room there, when you have to wall jump to get the Hallownest seal. And so yeah, a lot of this city split is just setting up the geo route to buy Lantern. It may seem kind of slow and awkward, but 1800 geo for Lantern is much, much faster than the alternatives, which would be either about a 4-minute trip through Soul Sanctum to get Desolate Dive, or any number of ungodly skips to get to Isva's tier instead of Crystal Heart. Which we will not be seeing in this tournament, I feel very confident. Isva's tier isn't even theoretically faster. It used to be, but we managed to kill that. Okay, so what Kaleva just did, hitting the lever through the floor in that room, is the single biggest skip from the 1221 patch. This is exclusive to this patch, and it saves about a 40-second arena or so. Nothing too major. It's just enemy in the same room you have to kill to open that lever the intended way. Alright, and this is the Watcher Knights fight. There are 5 Watchers. We'll spawn first one and then the other in pairs. And this is a very difficult boss. You are intended to have much more in terms of items when you fight this. And so the biggest way you'll see that is this scissor pattern. You know, where one knight bounces, the other does a floor roll. Both racers have practiced this fight a lot to be able to avoid that sort of thing. And Kaleva doing a really good job of handling this fight safely. Not going to knock anyone's socks off with the time so far, but damageless until the last wave is something to be really happy with. So one thing you do notice, on these floor rolls, they'll try and get behind the roll before shooting the Vengeful Spirit. That was an interesting way to end the fight, with 1 HP up slash from inside the knight. But who am I to judge? Anyways, what I was trying to say is getting the... if you set it up right, you can double or triple hit these floor rolls with Fireball, doing much more damage than the normal combo. And on ins0mnia side, you see really the hardest part of the Watcher Knights fight. It's really almost impossible to heal safely. Basically, any pattern which looks safe enough to heal, there can be a knight just waiting to roll on screen and ruin your day. And you can get easily caught into a heal, damage, heal cycle. No, ins0mnia hit the chandelier. Just playing this fight really safely. Yep, and he makes it out. Really good to see. No one wants to take a Watcher Knight's death. Even though I think it would have been nice if our racers didn't give us all heart attacks by both ending on 1 HP. So yeah, Kaleva had a much cleaner Watcher Knights fight, so while I didn't look at the exact time, I'm gonna guess that the lead expanded a bit. Okay, so anyways, we've been picking up a bunch of these items called relics. They have no function other than to be sold to this guy, and he pays a lot of money for them. Much, much, much more money than you can get by killing bosses for geochests, killing enemies. So basically every category for Hollow Knight, you're going to see a trip to Lem. And our racers are targeting 2,322 geo. That will be exactly enough to finish everything left in the game. So Kaleva just 1 geo short. There's about 100 places you could pick that up. ins0mnia is going to be ahead on the geo route. Comparatively. That really isn't a big deal. But yeah, as Axe points out, about a 2-minute difference here. Ooh, nice jump there by Kaleva in the room before King Station. Very deceptively difficult. Yeah, if ins0mnia can hold this together for late game, I think that this should definitely be a 37, 38 pace run. We'll have to see for sure though, because late game, especially getting to Hera, is extremely difficult. Almost definitely the hardest movement split in the game. Yeah, so a lot of people actually say the Crystal Heart split is kind of like the calm before the storm. There is a lot of movement involved in Crystal Peak, a lot of laser cycles, stuff like that. But really, for the most part, this is consistent. You can't really die here, you can't really lose a run here, but you can lose a few seconds here and there. Really, it'll just be up to the runners for how much of the Crystal Peak tech they want to use. Let's see, Kaleva missing the look-down glitch, which you can use to make tolls go about 3 seconds faster. Meanwhile, ins0mnia following closely behind. Gonna be getting Lantern in just about a minute here. Yeah, so Kaleva playing this room safe, opting to Fireball the Blindback? I don't remember the name. That's the fastest strat is to actually go a different way through the room and pogo an RNG pickaxe. We don't see many people do that, and if you don't do that, then normally you would damage boost through the enemy that Kaleva killed. Okay, and now the Crystal Heart room is probably one of the harder rooms of Crystal Peak itself. This is a very complicated room. So we see first Kaleva goes for an air stall with a fireball. Just saves a 1/10 of a second, quite literally. And then we have this laser cycle, which is actually quite lenient if you set up a damage boost on the second laser. Oh, ins0mnia. This room is really terrifying. We see very little of infected crossroads in this run, but the enemies in it are absolutely brutal. They chase you, they do a ton of damage. Literally everything to do with infected crossroads is awful. even just one room. Alright, so with Crystal Heart in hand, we can now get into the right side of Fog Canyon. Yeah, playing casually, this usually requires either Shake Cloak or Ismasteer. But there's actually one of the easiest acid skips in the game you can use to just sneak in through this entrance by the Crossroads Grub. So literally, all Kaleva has to do is press Crystal Heart on the right time, falling off the platform, and it's an easy acid skip. I have no evidence for it, but I want to say probably 5 to 6 frames of lenience for the Crystal Heart input. We'll probably see a much more difficult acid skip after Amon. We'll see how many tries that one takes. Ooh, this is really sketchy. ins0mnia did not heal. Oof. Yeah, I maybe was a bit unfair when I said that Crystal Peak was a cozy split earlier, because there is certainly a lot that can go wrong, and it has several more or less required damage boosts. Okay, but Kaleva entering Umu. I don't even know where to start with Umu. The movement here is scripted for the first cycle. The goal is to embed Umu into this bottom platform, and Umu is misbehaving, so gave it Kaleva an RNG extra attack, which means Kaleva missed the 2-cycle setup. It's now going to have to go for a kill in 3 cycles. Oh, that's really rough to see for ins0mnia. Yeah, like I said, that last section before Crystal Heart is the hardest part of this split for beginners. So you have to do all of the movement in that section pretty much flawless, or else you lose a ton of time, and that pressure can really get to you. Yeah, and unfortunately there aren't really any good shortcuts. Just reset the room. Yeah. Okay, so that's pretty much going to give this to Kaleva. Even with an Umu death here, dying in Crystal Peak is about a 3-minute time loss, I want to say. Alright, but Kaleva does manage to kill Umu in 3 cycles. Also ends this boss at 1 HP. But that's not quite as dangerous as Water Knights, because Umu is kind of safe. I say kind of. You can definitely die to Umu, but most of the damage in an Umu fight is intentional, just to set up those damage cycles. You'll see, farming with Dream Nail. Yeah, this one room is causing Kaleva and ins0mnia a ton of trouble. Really, what he ought to do here is just get full soul at the top of the room and then farm in the next room. Farm for health, I mean. There's no real reason to do the Crystal Heart split with anything less than full health at this point. Meanwhile, Kaleva is coming up on what I mentioned before, really the hardest movement split in the game. I believe we're going to be seeing the Queen's Gardens route, which most advanced runners tend to use. And it requires a difficult acid skip into one of the latest areas in the game, keeping in mind that we're still equipped at like less than the halfway point of Hollow Knight. And once we get into this area, we have to do an arena, and just all sorts of really annoying and kind of difficult movement. So here's the acid skip. As you can see, this wall is much smaller than the previous walls we've been using. Yeah, that was too low to set up the wall jump on the other side. Oh, this is sketchy. We're gonna see... Could either see Deep Nest route, or we could see backtracking to a bench. It's looking like Kaleva is going to farm soul and refill health here. Yeah, again, we don't really have frame timings for Hollow Knight. Actually, getting that kind of info is kind of hard. The game does update physics on a 60 hertz system. But QGA is going to be pretty close to 1 or 2 frame trick, both on the wall cling crystal heart here and on the wall jump on the other end. And ins0mnia dies again in Crystal Peak and loses all of their geo. This isn't devastating because you're only expected to have 172 geo going into Beastin. There's a lot of places you can pick up geo nodes to get back up there. But it's very frustrating, and would not blame ins0mnia if this led to a forfeit. But yeah, Kaleva really getting stymied by this QGA skip here. Queen's Gardens acid skip. Sorry for not explaining that. This only saves about 30 seconds compared to going through Deep Nest, the quote-unquote intended way to get to Hera. So, at this point, Kaleva has already lost well more than the skip actually saves. But it's important to keep in mind that Kaleva probably has no familiarity whatsoever with Deep Nest route. A lot of newer runners don't, because they just learned the Queen's Gardens route from the very beginning. And if you don't know Deep Nest can be a lot scarier than it actually. Even though, in actuality, it's a pretty safe area. Oh, bench in Queen Station, don't do this. Just bench. No. Why do people make self-destructive decisions? Okay. ins0mnia looking pretty good. He did just miss the laser cycle, but at this point, not really worried about it, just really probably wanting to get back on track with the route. Okay, so this is the fastest entrance to Deep Nest proper that Kaleva is taking. There is also an entrance behind Mantis Lords, which is absolutely awful. No one would ever use it in a speedrun route if they could possibly avoid it. And then there's one more secret entrance to Deep Nest from Queen's Gardens, and that's the one that top level any percent routes use, and that Kaleva was trying to get to. So as you can see, we have a lot of mazes through Deep Nest that Kaleva is going through. This is all part of why the alternate route saves 30 seconds. It's just really slow and unpleasant, and you get absolutely nothing for going through all these mazes. Fortunately, because the players do have Lantern, we won't be seeing any Dark Deep Nest today. This will be much easier because of it. dark rooms in Hollow Knight tend to be extremely difficult without the lantern because the actual big change that occurs, you see all these rooms Kaleva is in right now are absolutely loaded with spikes. When you have the lantern, these rooms have hazard respawns everywhere, so if you hit a spike, you'll respawn right next to where you were. If you don't have the lantern and you hit a spike, you start all the way back at the beginning. And so that's where lantern makes a huge difference. Okay, so Kaleva made it back to the route sync. At this point, we are going straight to Beast Den. Shouldn't be any more surprises, although Kaleva's a little low on health compared to what they might prefer. If they mess up a damage boost in Beast Den, we could see a death. Fortunately, Beast Den deaths are the fastest death in the run, pretty much. So Kaleva really isn't in danger of the race at this point. Still has about a 6 to 7 minute lead right now. Yeah, unfortunately, even though both racers were struggling at the same time on stream, by bailing out of QGA, Kaleva managed to recover a lot better than ins0mnia did. I mean, ins0mnia had no choice with Crystal Peak. But yeah, so this is Beast Den that Kaleva is in. It's very long and full of spiders, and a lot of people don't like it for some reason. But basically, the only really difficult part is the two devouts, which are the big masked enemies. Those are actually coded as walls, so you can't just damage boost through them. And their melee attack does 2 damage. So what we see instead is the racers will damage boost off of the body, which does 1 damage, and then iframe through the attack. Usually pretty safe, but you can always fat finger the button and dash too early before your attack is done, and then if that had happened to Kaleva, they would have died at that point. But anyways, that will be the last streamer for Kaleva. So the Black Egg Temple is now open. And we'll be seeing the final boss. Meanwhile, I missed the Umu fight, but I'm pretty sure ins0mnia finished with a 3-cycle there, which is really perfectly good. Getting a 2-cycle on Umu is very precise and difficult, and only saves about 17 seconds or so. So yeah, the last geo purchase is a stag because of the hard save at Hera. If we were to try and skip this stag, that would mean backtracking all the way to the top of Crossroads, which is, I don't even know, I want to guess it's at least 6 minutes of walking. It would be awful. Yes, the final winner is determined by in-game time. However, right now, based on their timers, I want to say that Kaleva we're seeing Kaleva sooner real time, so Kaleva's ahead by several minutes anyways. Yep, so entering the final boss fight against the Hollow Knight. Really, compared to the other two fights, there isn't as much of a strategy. Really, the optimal thing to do here is simply just to wail on him. One thing which you'll be seeing a lot in this fight, which I haven't commented on yet, is something called fireball cancels. Basically, ordinarily, a nail swing takes 0.4 seconds to recover from. But if you use a fireball right after a nail swing, you can cut that down to 0.2 seconds to recover. The fireball also has a 0.4 second recovery time. So that's a little technical, but basically the idea is that when you combo nail into fireball, you dramatically increase your DPS. And so that's really the single biggest part of this fight. You also see a few doubles where if you set yourself up just behind the dash attack like Kaleva just did, you can get the fireball to hit twice, and that does much more damage. Fireball really carrying here compared to the nail attacks. Misses Scream Skip, where you take damage to regain control. You may also notice Kaleva isn't attacking on the stabbing phases. That's because Hollow Knight only takes 1 damage from any source when it's attacking itself. But yep, that will be GG. Kaleva finishing with official time of 40:52. That's about 5 minutes ahead of their PB, so probably not the race time they were looking for, but I really have to say that was a good recovery from the frustrations with UGA. Like, yeah, really, they handled Deep Nest Route like a pro, considering probably hasn't seen much practice. But yeah, ins0mnia now doing the same thing. Probably about 5 to 6 minutes from finishing himself. Yep, so really the big thing for ins0mnia right here is that geo counter. He's about 120 geos short, which means we're going to be seeing a lot of farming in Beast Den. Fortunately, there's a lot of geo rocks. The other devouts are a bit easier to kill, so there are backups for this, but not great ones. Ooh, getting the audio glitch. This was found about a week ago by Scurry. Basically, what happens is if you hold the initial right input from sitting on the trap bench, then the game never resets the music when you get into Beast Den. And so, well, now we have this otherwise very creepy and scary place with somewhat goofy music of the obvious trap by the entrance. Which, speaking of, I never understood. Never mind. Maybe a thought for later. Skipping the ground. That is, disgusting. Also, that deboost off of the devout below was maybe not optimal. Looking at his geo right now, I'm thinking ins0mnia is probably going to have to kill 2 extra devouts. Ooh. So you can get a 2-hit cycle off of the devout without taking damage. That does require having dash. You dash in, or dash in, hit twice, dash out. Without dash, you can only get 1 hit when the devout opens up. But of course, the ideal is having enough health to be able to do 4 hit cycles. Alright, so this is the first Geo Rock. Ooh, he missed a lot of Geo out of it. Because that Geo Rock is supposed to give you 30. Oh, ew. That is not... not optimal devout farming strats. What is this RNG? Holy cow, that's like, I'm gonna say at least 1 in 64. Maybe worse. The FSM for devouts is very hard to remember. Okay, that's a 40 geo pickup. So, should come down here, take the bench, and then kill 1 more devout. Yep. Actually did skip a geo node he could have taken, which would leave him with enough geo right now. But he's just gonna kill this devout. I was ready to see a double hit on the devout, but you can actually get double hits with Fireball on the devout if it's moving back when you hit it, but those are very rare and quite possibly frame rate dependent, so not super surprising that we didn't see one. I don't know if I've ever had one actually. Okay, but that is farm over for ins0mnia. Just about 3 minutes left, assuming no issues with the Hollow Knight fight. Yep, so one last look at the Hollow Knight fight. One thing I didn't mention earlier is that this fight is much easier on the patch we're on, 1.2.21, compared to the current patch. Basically, when Team Cherry made their Lifeblood update, and improved game performance, added the Hive Knight fight, they made a lot of changes to this boss fight, which were somewhat confusing to us. They made a lot of the boss's attacks much harder to dodge, or have less wind-up, and some of them do double damage on current too. So it's just altogether an extremely difficult and annoying fight there. And it just so happens that no speedruns do that fight. Most NMG speedruns are on this patch, with the exception of 112, which is on current patch, but doesn't fight this boss. Stutters. This is so scary. Fortunately, ins0mnia should be really close to the first self-stab phase, which is a guaranteed 10-second break or so, in which you can't deal damage to Hollow Knight, so you're going to heal anyways, normally. So like I said before, during this, Hollow Knight only takes 1 damage from any source of attack. There's only one instance of that, which is guaranteed. But you can get other self-stabs during this phase from RNG, which tends to be really annoying because those lose a lot of time. Okay, no scream skipped, not too surprising. Probably a better idea to just conserve health at this point. Hollow Knight is very close to being dead by this point. Just be a few more fireballs. Alright, and I guess that's GG and a rage quit for ins0mnia. Oh no, never mind. But yeah, that really, outside of the really unfortunate Crystal Heart split, that really wasn't a bad run for him. Definitely a good chance, I think, of bringing it back. Bringing it back and getting a PB in loser's bracket. That was really much better than the PB of 4330 would indicate. Yeah, good job by both runners. I don't think we're going to have either of them in here. So I guess that's it for now. Doesn't look like there's anything else on SpeedGaming for a few hours at least.